goodness.
I wanted to put sound, but I thought that'd be cheesy.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. I just really wanted to start off that way. I have more confidence now. So the title of our project is The Shift in the Values, Standards, and Moral Principles of American Society, a comparative analysis of the baby boomers, Generation X, and the Millennials. By Rachel Gross, Bridget Bitanga, and Kelly Levy. So the background statement of our problem is that through the 1940s and the 1960s, you had the baby boomer generation. It started in 1946 and it went to 1964, and they were really, like, from everything that we pulled from the literature, kind of like the backbone of America, where you saw all of these conservative ideals start to come to light. So they were in the middle of a war and they were going through all this stuff, and this is where you saw a huge emphasis on family and religion and work and the values of hard work. So what our problem statement is that we don't feel that those ideals have carried over to this generation. Throughout the past 6 decades, we've lost a lot of the ideals and the traditions that America was known for. So the problem statement is that we are going to outline the dramatic shift in values, standards, and moral principles from the baby boomers to the millennial generations.
So the purpose of the study is to show the decline in American values, standards, and moral principles by examining the negative fluctuation of 5 separate categories amongst consecutive generations: crime rates, lack of identification with religion, decrease in voting trends, and increase in sexual promiscuity, and the negative impact of advancing technology.
So our major research questions were, have there been any significant shift in values, standards, and moral principles? And is this shift positive or negative? So not only are we looking for one, but we're identifying what kind of slope that is. A lot of the sub-questions are, how did crime rates fluctuate between the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y? How did the percentage of Americans who identified with religion fluctuate from Generation X, baby boomers, and millennials? How did the degree of active voters fluctuate? Have teen pregnancy rates fluctuated? Have they gone up? Have they gone down? Have they remained the same? How has emerging technology impacted the newer generations? And how do present-day baby boomers, Generation Xers, Generation Y, millennials believe American values, morals, and principles have changed over time?
Alright, so our hypothesis statement is that we predict that the data we collect will reflect the present society. The millennial generation is in a state of overall decline, morally, ethically, and financially, as compared to the former generations of baby boomers and Generation X. So we believe that all those core foundations are not become so core anymore.
And Bridge is going to kind of review the theoretical framework.
So a lot of the literature,
I was like, what are you doing?
sorry. Okay, so a lot of the literature proves that even though you would think we believe crime now is more than it ever was before, it's actually not true. The implications of the media and our accessibility to every negative thing that happens, whether it's at school, whether it's 15-year-olds getting in a fight, everyone has full access and there's no legal boundaries to it. So everything you do can now be on the internet for the rest of your life. A lot of it proves that crime hasn't increased. If anything, it's decreased because there is so much attention focused on what you can't do. As well, a lot of the literature that we found, there were studies that proved that through the generations, there's the ideas of working hard for the country, working hard for the individual, and then a lack of hard work, and the understanding that there is much more with our generation, baby boomers, we're millennials, sorry. With the millennials is that we rely more so on like a teacher, and we associate help with our parents because the Generation Xers were helicopter parents, whereas baby boomer generation raised their kids a little differently, which may have caused the shift in parenting ideas. Maybe they were a little looser with their parenting, and that's why the Generation Xers were so uptight. As well, a lot of the studies that we found prove that hard work is seen differently, and a lot of the social standards are different because before you used to go home and any issues you had, you didn't have to face them until you went back to work, back to school, back to the mall, wherever you were going. Whereas now we take every conflict we have home with us, and there is no escape from that. We deal with everything, and you don't have time where you talk about it in person. You have the ability to talk to whoever you want to talk to face to face. So a lot of this literature proved on both sides that things definitely have shifted in terms of values and standards, but also it's just kind of the way of the world right now. Okay, so review of the literature. Also, I'm not going to do that. Okay, so a lot of our literature proved that there has been a shift, but whether or not this shift is such a big deal to the baby boomers and whether or not they actually played a part in causing it. A lot of literature also shows that instead of there being a narcissistic and negative outlook on life from the millennials, it's all they know. They grew up in a generation, as I said before, where everything we do is online. People can take pictures of you. Before they didn't have cell phones in different generations, so a lot of the literature proved that things are just different, even though there is a shift. That it's not necessarily just that the millennials are narcissists and that they're not good people and that we don't have the same work ethic, but that we've had a lot of helicopter parenting, and a lot of it, if there is such a generation gap, and there, a lot of us are in different generations here, that the feelings of the lack of respect and things like that, like how they are caused and what they are caused by, a lot of our literature looks at the effects of each generation on the next.
So, and then on top of that, the review of the literature also showed that in regards to pregnancy rates, there was a huge epidemic of pregnancy in the baby boomer generation, hence the name baby boomers. There was a significant drop from Generation X, and then it's now taking off again through the millennials and then the centennials, the people that follow us. So while it did drop, it's now on the rise again as children lose that responsibility, or are now raised in a generation of entitlement. And where the helicopter parenting comes in from Generation X to the millennials is that the baby boomers had so many kids that they were, you didn't have to come home till the street lights turned off, or came on and it got dark. Whereas now, you have your cell phone, you have a tracking device on you. I know my parents tracked me wherever I went, even when I was in school. They always knew what you were doing. So these kids always had their parents to fall back on in our generation. So now, there is no accountability. When you don't get a science project done, well, mom didn't do my science project. So now, you have kids having kids because they can. And they haven't, that ideology that, you wait till you get married to have sex,
Right.
and you have a steady income. None of that really applies anymore because the helicopter parenting are not demonstrating that to their children.
Well, and a lot of our literature also showed that, obviously the generational differences are not just standards. People got married younger, the baby boomer generations. I think my parents got married at 20 and 21. I'm 21 right now, and I've had one boyfriend my entire life. I can't imagine being married right now. But, if I was born 30 years earlier, I probably would have kids right now. So it's just the generations are different without all these different personality differences and the way they were raised. It's just they're a different time in the world.
And it speaks to religion too, because when religion was the center of attention, that's why people waited till they got married, and that's why people got married so young, so they could have their babies and do all that, whatever. What the literature also showed us was that although the decrease in organized religion is there, meaning kids aren't going to church anymore, and even a significant amount of Generation Xers are not going to church anymore, not as many people are identifying with organized religion. However, they still identify themselves as Christians or Muslims or Jewish. They just have more of a personal, what they refer to as a personal relationship, where you're starting to see now churches are going, they're gone. I mean, you see a huge church in Leesburg that's a Catholic church, but really how many churches are being built over and over and over again anymore? You're starting to lose that societal influence of religion. For the experiment, we did a phenomenological approach, which is the most appropriate. So what we did was we decided to use Northern Virginia Loudoun campus as our population. And then from there, we took a sample size of 150 people. And how we did that was we took the three groups. We had Generation X, the baby boomers, and the millennials, and we took 50 people from each group. We did 25 men and 25 women. Do you want to read the data question?
Yeah. The data collection procedure. In order to showcase the shift in values, standards, and moral principles between generations, each individual was given 5 index cards, which they were then asked to rank the order from highest priority to lowest priority. Each card was labeled differently with a different activity, including spending time with friends, family, partying, working, and attending a religious event.
So the internal and external validity, the validity could have been skewed because of the way that the survey, for lack of a word, was distributed. People were in a rush. You're on campus. People have to get to class. People have to go to work. So even though it's relatively simple, organize 5 cards, people could have just been careless or just dishonest. They could have thought that we were judging them.
Right.
We tried to give them space so that it didn't look as if we were looking over their shoulders. But you never know. Some people want to be perceived in a better light than maybe they should be.
Well, even with validity and tying into the research, there's a lot of research on the idea of judgment and how there is less judgment in our generation now and the generation that's approaching, and how when you take these surveys, you think, am I going to say what I really think, or from a psychological standpoint, do we say what we really think, or do we say what we think is right?
And we struggled with this because it took us forever to find a good way to extract our data from our sample, and then everything that we reviewed in the literature, this was the best compromise we could have between an experiment and just a yes or no survey. So we took what was done from what we read and then kind of tried to tie it in with the class. And then, Kelly, can you do the ethical consideration?
A minor ethical consideration was the personal nature of the questions and how the research participants would be affected by being asked said questions. It was not the intention of any of the researchers to inflict psychological distress upon any of the participants.
I just wanted to sound really professional right there. So this is the Excel chart that we did. So after we collected our data, we organized it into an Excel spreadsheet. So you see we have the gender, age, and that's all we asked, completely anonymous. And then family, friends, religion, work, and partying. So the numbers that you see, 2, 3, 1, 4, 5, is the order. So example, the very first person, they ranked religion as their number 1 priority. Family is their number 2, friends is 3, etc., etc. So this is for the baby boomers. This is for Generation X. And this is for the millennials.
Surprising. That was surprising.
Oh, I know. Our results were very surprising.
Yeah.
So what you're going to see here is the highest priority. So this is in order to compare all of them, we had to kind of, what? Oh, sorry. We had to kind of, we couldn't do a pie chart for each number. So what we did was we took the highest priorities and the lowest priorities of all the generations and compared them. So this is priority number 1 for the baby boomers. You can see that the highest here was actually religion, followed by family, and then by work, and then partying was non-existent. Could you imagine if 60-year-olds wanted to party? And then their lowest priority overall was partying, followed by, sorry, I can't see, friends, and then family, and then religion.
Well, I mean, judging by the results we got, that why work we think was first is because work is how you provide for that family. So I think that was interesting how work was.
So this actually did corroborate a lot of what we read in the literature.
Yeah.
From our Generation X, we have the highest priority being religion, which actually really surprised me. And then family, and then work, and again, no partying. And then the lowest priority was partying, followed by friends, and then family, and then work. The millennials, their highest priority was actually religion. 50% of the millennials said that religion was their number 1 priority, which went against what we read in the literature. Followed by work, which we thought was interesting as well, because you read a lot about the lack of work ethic, but actually, we'll get to that in a second. And then you have family. And partying was actually not on the highest priority at all. Not one millennial stated that partying was their number one priority, which on a college campus, albeit it is a high commuter campus, was surprising. So after analyzing the data, it became clear that as it relates to the chosen population, there is no distinct shift in standards, values, and moral principles amongst the baby boomer generation X and millennial generations. On average, each generation was within 10% of one another when it came to their highest and lowest priorities. There was no substantial shift in any of the aforementioned topics. So when you compared them all together, we were actually very similar. And that surprised us a lot because you read all this stuff and you hear in the media, which is what Bridget was focusing on so much, about how this generation lacks respect and we're rude and we're not as smart, we don't work as hard, we live on our phones. But yet when you sit a person down individually, and that's what we did, we took them away from their friends, and we had them fill out, do the experiment, we're all very, very similar.
Well, I think, with validity, of course, being partying is our, last item that you can choose, which is so different than the other ones. Of course, it's hard to, we didn't make it going out, we made it partying. Like, we made it so that this was generational and it was something that was a little more specific. It's hard to, that goes back to the validity kind of being hard to, not put partying last. But it does speak on the fact that even though these are different generations, that everyone is human and everyone at the end of the day, does focus on what matters. But that was comforting.
Excellent.